to your chest.
Oh, okay.
All right, let's bring in a guy we love. He is one of the best basketball writers on the planet.
Yes, he is.
From The Athletic, the one and only Anthony Slater. What's up, man?
I also think Memphis is going to win early, so I don't even think the Portland clinch will be needed. I think you may know by second quarter, first quarter, whatever the timing will be.
Look at that.
Wow. Okay, Slater.
Man.
I mean, that's a no Paul George Clippers team going into Memphis, who's won, I think, 7 in a row. They're playing really well, by the way. That 2 seed felt up for grabs for a while for the Kings. It does no longer seems up for grabs.
Yeah, the John Morant, we thought maybe he would be gone longer. And then even without him, they found a way to kind of get through it. That was impressive, especially without Steven Adams, too, Brandon Clark being out. Yeah, I've been really impressed with their ability to hang on to that number 2 spot, no doubt. Anthony, yeah, the Kings getting ready to clinch a playoff spot. It's kind of crazy to think that they're in a position now to secure home court advantage throughout the playoffs, or not through the playoffs, through the first round. What was the biggest surprise of this Kings season in your mind?
I mean, just the historic level of the offense. They're still first right now, right?
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. So, technically best offense ever. I know the numbers are a little juiced. It's kind of the steroid era for all stats right now. But just, when you mapped out how they could make the playoffs, it was like, all right, can Mike Brown pull them out of the bottom 20 and maybe have them like 19th, 18th in defense? And can the offense be top 10? And when you were saying top 10, you were thinking like 8, 9, right? That was really good. You built a nice, offense around the Fox Sabonis pick and roll. I did not think like number 1 in the league, like better than the Jokic Nuggets right now, better than all the other teams. So that to me has to be the surprise, right?
Yeah, I would say that part is super surprising, but I think one of the other surprises to me is how well this team is showing, oh, hey, an offense can also lead you to this much success, because not seeing much of a defense out there, I guess when you really look at the numbers and you break down the analytics, it's like where this team is, it's not good defensively, but there's moments out there where you go, okay, I get why this can get them by and why it can create some of their offense. But I would say that the fact that their defense has still where it is has allowed them to be the number 3 seed in the Western Conference has also been a surprise. What about for you?
Yeah, it's just, I think maybe the biggest surprise is that Mike Brown's the guy on the sidelines, like having to captain this type of ship, because we all know who Mike Brown is at his core. Go back to his Cleveland days, right? He's like, bloodying up games against the Pistons 92-87. Like that's how he wants to win a playoff game. And I think it's good for the team. I mean, you could hear it in all of his post-game press conferences. That's still like he's still warning them, like, hey, come first round, there's probably going to be a game you have to win 101-97, right? You have to win on the defensive end. And I do think post All-Star break, there have been nice little peeks into that ability by them. Obviously, he keeps trying Kessler Edwards. That's kind of been an interesting experiment because he's searching for somebody to defend on the wing. But also, what was that Brooklyn game? They gave up like no second chance points, no transition points.
They ended up giving like one fast break point or 2 fast break points technically at the very end of the game. But yeah, no second chance and only 2 fast break points, and it happened at the very end of the game.
I have not talked to Mike Brown about this, but I bet that's his favorite game this season. Like that's the formula. Especially, in Minnesota, especially after coming in, winning the other night. I mean, feeling really good about the matchup. Like, might be the first round matchup, and you're gonna that's gonna be more of a game that's kind of dragged into the mud a little bit, and the big question will be like, can they win those style of games?
Yeah, you brought up Kessler Edwards too, and there have been moments I like what he can bring, but yeah, he is still searching, and I don't know how concerning that should be for the playoffs when you're trying Kessler Edwards. Last game, out of nowhere, we see Alex Len, and it kind of goes to show you how they have felt all season long about that backup 5 spot. We've seen Metu, we've seen brief glimpses of Rashawn Holmes, and then Alex Len played the most minutes he has played since starting a game against Denver when Sabonis was out. How big of a concern is that he's still kind of searching at this point?
I mean, it's not that rare. Let's go back to the Warriors playoff run last year. Like Damian Lee is playing game 1 against Dallas, and then Moses Moody's making an appearance in game 2 because Lee struggled. And Jonathan Kuminga, people probably don't remember, started in the Memphis series 2 games for the Warriors last year. Did not play well in either of the games, was pulled quick, probably got like 12 minutes both the games, but they were experimenting. That's what high-level coaching is, especially from a matchup-based standpoint. I think part of what Mike Brown was doing the other day, they might play Minnesota in the first round, like who works, who doesn't. You will often see in playoff series the first couple games, particularly game 1 is a feel out process. Game 2, typically whoever lost game 1 has a counter punch and adjustments. And by about game 3, game 4, the rotations are trimmed down to about 8 and they're settled. You know who works, who doesn't in a particular matchup. So, I mean, the fact that he's experimenting late in the season, like, just get ready because he's going to be experimenting in game 1, game 2, game 3 of some of these series.
I'm glad Anthony broke that down because, some of the stuff you were saying, I'm going, oh, yeah, we haven't had to deal with this in a long time in Sacramento. Usually we're just watching games for fun. Yeah, there's actually different levels of coaching come playoff time. I felt this in almost 17 years, Anthony.
Yeah, and that is where I think Mike Brown will help.
Yeah.
He was go to the West Finals last year, what they did defensively, and that was Mike Brown, Draymond Green, Steve Kerr kind of brain trust there. Against Luka won them the West Finals easily. They really switched up the defense. I can remember that entire series. Mike Brown, running out mid possession with double fists up in the air because he's going to the zone defense, or they were doing box and one, and it felt defensive coordinator middle linebacker-y with Draymond Green. I don't know who the middle linebacker on the Kings would be, but it's not only a different level of coaching, but it is where the Warriors have really excelled in the Steve Kerr era, and most of the Steve Kerr era has included Mike Brown, which is playoff schemes. They have never lost a Western Conference playoff series, 18-0 or 16-0, I think it is, in the West playoffs, and a lot of that is just because when they get in a chess match, they have typically solved it before the other team.
Which I'm just so glad that they don't have Mike Brown going into this postseason, because obviously we're looking at a scenario that the Kings and the Warriors could take on one another, right? And watching that game last night, I mean, obviously you were at the Minnesota Kings game, and then watching that game last night, we're all rooting for Pelicans to get the win so then the Kings can clinch a spot last night. But that Warriors team, 2 different teams playing out there in that first half and then that second half. And when they play like they did in that second half last night, Slater, I, as a Kings fan, get very nervous about what it could look like in the postseason for the Sacramento Kings. Do you think that's just a glimpse at the Warriors and what they take their game to in a postseason?
Yeah, I mean, look, that was Draymond Green just raising the emotional level of the team and the focus level and challenging a younger Pelicans team to answer that, and they didn't. And that is what he would do in a series with the Kings. He would roar around the court, pick up a technical in game 1, emotionally challenge Domantas Sabonis, get the entire Golden One Center booing him, and see how the Kings would respond. And there will be a statistic going into that series if it did materialize of playoff games played on one side, playoff games played on the other side. And the Kings' playoff experience includes Mike Brown, who was an assistant coach for the Warriors, and Harrison Barnes, who was like the 5th best player on a Warriors team. And that is basically almost the entire extent of their playoff experience. So that does matter. Now, the Kings have had a better season. There's reason to believe the Kings should be able to score very well against the Warriors. The Warriors have not been able to win on the road, and it's obviously would be a tough environment that they're walking into. But I think if you are being just calculated, strategic from a Kings perspective, you should not want to play the Warriors in the first round. I mean, and that's not a Kings thing. That's the Nuggets should not want the Warriors coming out of the 8. The Grizzlies, outwardly probably would say they do want the Warriors coming out of the 7, but is that really who they want to play in the first round? Because they've proven who they are over, this might be the end, but do you want to test that in round 1? Would you rather try to test that in round 2, round 3?
Yeah. And it's interesting because watching the Warriors this year it's been bizarre, right? Steph being out, Wiggins still gone. And you're like, this team doesn't have it, man. I watched them last night in that second half and I went, I know it's a Pelicans team that gets kind of shorthanded, but it's a Pelicans team that won 5 in a row and they were up by 20. And what they did defensively against Brandon Ingram, I mean, they were into him from
Oof.
GP2 to Kuminga to Draymond. And I was like, wow, they raised it a little bit here. And I know they're a bad road team during the regular season, but I think it's just based on their track record a little bit that you go, I don't know how big of a factor that
You
would
want
be
to know
for
what their
them in the
track record
playoffs.
is? They're currently on an NBA record streak of, I think it's 26 straight playoff series they've won a road game. They've gone
Yeah,
into the other
see.
team. It's an NBA record and it's ongoing. The last one they won was obviously Game 6 in Boston, which was how many months ago at this point? Like 9 months ago, calendar year. Like they beat the Celtics in Boston. And I'm telling you, that was an insane crowd. Having been there, that
Yeah.
was like top 3 playoff crowd I've ever been in. I've seen them win there. I've seen them going to Oklahoma City in the prime of the Durant Westbrook era and like stick a dagger in that franchise's heart and then go and steal away their best player. So yeah, I mean, like we could sit here and talk about how bad they've been this year in many ways, and the fact that they're starting small forward is not with the team right now, which is a major factor from a tactical standpoint. But they have something in their DNA that should spook anybody.
Yeah.
I agree. I want to go back to last night because watching the game, and I'm not like you've been around the Warriors for a long time. You have a good feel for the emotions and what they've been through and all the dynamics. I thought the Draymond stuff at the end of that first half was not a good thing at the time.
It felt selfish.
It felt like even like some of the guys may have been a little irritated, and I don't know if that was the case. Like that was actually not a great moment, and it was what happened at halftime that changed the thing. How do you feel about that at the moment? Because it felt like Draymond, it was almost a distraction. Like it felt like he was super hot, that maybe was taking away and compounding the mistakes. The Pelicans finished okay in that second quarter. It was what happened in the third quarter that I felt like changed the game. What was your viewpoint of all that?
It was risky, I would say,
Mhm.
because at any point during that entire, prolonged situation, one of the referees, Ed Malloy, or one of the other guys could have just been like, second tee, that's enough, you're out of here. He gets ejected. He's suspended the next game because that would have been his 18th technical. And they probably would have, he's a plus 26. He was awesome in the second half. They don't win that game if he's ejected. So that spirals to a point that might be like the final nail in their season. If like I said, if just one referee decides that he wants to give a second technical, that doesn't happen. I do think a lot of the second half was the emotional lift he did give them. I know that, right when it happened, there was a little bit of a Pelicans run, but he juiced up a team that needed to be juiced up. And he was yelling the entire second half. I know there wasn't maybe the memorable scuffle, but he was going after coaches. He was ripping one of the back of the bench assistants, like scolding him. He obviously had to have Bob Myers come down to cool him down at one point, yelling at the Pelicans bench. And it woke him up. And it could have gone the wrong way. It has gone the wrong way several times in Draymond Green's life and career, but it's also gone the right way a bunch. And it worked last night. It was a risky tactic, but it paid off.
God, I mean, even I was annoyed, but like I was annoyed because I just appreciate good basketball, and I appreciate when people aren't being selfish, and I just felt like, oh, it's about him right now. It's about him. But you're right. I mean, whatever, he got credit after the game too from other players, from
Steve Kerr,
yeah. About being that emotional leader. And sometimes like they've been in it together long enough, so they must just understand each other.
I would just say, like, I was in the arena last night. I know it was like kind of a big game from a stake standpoint, but the arena was a little bit dead. You kind of feel that they don't have it this season, and you're wondering. And I think there were some players, I think, wondering, like, gosh, man, like, this thing might be dying right now. And then suddenly he goes berserk and the arena is lit up. Like, people are standing on their feet at the end of the second quarter, and he just completely changed the entire mood of the situation. And suddenly it was like, oh, they're taking the game serious.
Wow.
And they were taking you saw it in the second half. That was a team that suddenly decided to take the game very serious. And that was in a lot of ways because Draymond just jolted them awake. I mean, even if it was done in a selfish way, like, it's what happened.
And especially after that loss against Minnesota on their home floor, obviously what happened there at the end with everyone choking. And and it stunk again for the Sacramento Kings because the Pelicans didn't get the win. The Kings didn't get to clinch, but they get a chance tonight. And I mean, Anthony, you've now have covered this team more and more closely this season. The Portland Trailblazers, like we've already talked about, don't really have anyone. It's going to be tonight, right?
Drew Eubanks scoring 39 tonight. Watford's gonna. I don't know. I mean, if it's not tonight, then I might start to be like, what's happening here?
Dude,
but
Anthony, their all-time record in Portland is kind of insane. They played 110 games or 110 games. They were 20-90 all time.
That's horrendous.
Yeah.
The truth is, I don't even think they'd need to win tonight, as I said earlier. Like I think all three results, they only need one of the three. I think I would probably guess that they'd get all three tonight.
Okay.
And even if they didn't, there's like still several days ahead. They already ruined it. Like it should have been at home. Like we all know that. I will have a story dropping once they clinch it tonight where I, during the third quarter, went down and sat with Brad Miller for about 10 minutes. And because he's sitting third row and he's the starting center of the last team and he's having a good time. He's a huge Kings fan now.
Yeah.
And he was like, I was like, hey, you want me to talk to you post game? And he was like, no, like a post game is going to be too fun. I'm going to be, I'm going to be having too good of a time. I don't want to sit there for a 10-minute interview. I'm like, I get that. This is about to be a party. So let's talk now, and then go have your good time. And then by the fourth quarter, I mean, I think he was out of his seat probably with 2 minutes left, like half the arena was. So to me, they already ruined that moment, but it's not really going to matter because they're going to get a game one at home. So.
There were so many jinxes that night. Come on now. Slater interviewing Brad Miller in the third quarter about celebrating.
No such thing as jinxes. I want to ask you about that game. I walked away because I know a lot of people got nervous after the way Minnesota won. I went, you know what? The Kings were 5 of 27 from three. And I know they didn't get as many threes as maybe they wanted up, but they missed some open looks. I went back and watched, and then the numbers back it up. 21 of the 27 threes that they attempted were either wide open or open. The defense was not good. It hasn't been good all year. They lost a close game, and I didn't think they were really good in that game.
Yeah, I mean, look, it was kind of an outlier shooting performance, but those happen in the playoffs, and it's about trying to win. Again, that's when I say you got to win a game 101-97 and in a huge swing game 3, that includes you got to be able to win a game that you shoot 20% from 3. And that is, to me, the bigger picture concern of like, are they a title contender or not, right? Are they a true threat to make a long, deep run in the playoffs? And the skepticism would come on the defensive end and the fact that they do kind of rely on prettier offensive numbers that at times when the playoff game changes, and this is stuff their coaching staff knows and is trying to adjust to. But when you start to be able to hold guys off ball more, when veteran coaching staffs and teams are able to scout all the Domantas Sabonis, handoff action, see it in game 1, decide how they want to, attack it in game 2, maybe spring some doubles, and their offense is going to be held down on certain nights, and it's like, can they win those type of games? And like, I'm not saying that Minnesota game was some indicator that, oh no, they can't, but everything is just like if we talk about the Warriors, every game feels like a bullet point, that a check-in point of like, what do we really think about this team? And yeah, I'd say their last week has not been entirely encouraging, but their 10 games post All-Star break were extremely encouraging. So I still feel decent about them. I am curious what the matchup they get is. I do think that'll matter for them.
Yep.
Avoid the Warriors.
Uh-huh.
Everyone else.
No.
What's the ideal 6? That's realistic. You can't go Blazers. Shoot up.
No, I mean, I was before Dallas collapsed, I was all about bringing on Dallas, take care of them easy. I don't know if there's an ideal matchup, to be honest.
Minnesota's been tough for them. Like at their length alone, they struggle with length in so many different ways. But
they had 60 points in the paint on Minnesota and had 40 free throw attempts. And oh, by the way, Anthony, call me crazy.
You're crazy.
We have not seen the Kings play Minnesota with Cat, and I think Cat changes things for them. I don't know if it's for a good reason either. I think it makes things a little more complicated for Ant to do his thing. I think defensively there are more challenges. I actually think they're a better team without Cat. That's my hot take of the day.
I think it's a complicated mix. They got so many centers now, right? It's like him, Gobert, and Naz Reid, who kind of needs to play.
He needs to play.
Yeah. I think Minnesota or the matchup I'm looking at as a possibility that I don't think a lot of people. Clippers could fall. Clippers
I know.
have 2 straight in Memphis right now. I don't know when you're going to see Paul George again. Not in the regular season. Is he going to be ready for Game 1 in the playoffs? I don't know. It was a pretty scary looking knee injury. If the Warriors have the Spurs coming up, they have Portland to end the season. They got some winnable games. They could leap the Clippers. Honestly, the Timberwolves could too, and maybe the Clippers are down in the play-in. But like that is a team that I think is very much a possibility at 6. Those have been fun games this season, and the possibility of no Paul George, that might be the most appealing matchup to the Kings.
I get scared of Kawhi. I get a little. I'm not nervous about Ty Lue. I just think if we have talked about his in-game adjustments and what he's been able to do, and then what is he doing in a postseason as a head coach compared to Mike Brown. We've seen some of Mike Brown's mistakes as of late too, just even sometimes going more for the offense rather than going for guys that can lock down.
When
guys.
you say mistakes, are we what we believe?
There we go.
Do. And like we know what the hell we're talking about. We're like,
Correct.
hey, you should play some more Terrence Davis. Like we know what we're talking about.
We're allowed to criticize a little bit. Come on.
I know. I bring it all on. By the way, Anthony, Morgan would be nervous no matter the matchup.
So what?
You could be like, hey, Portland
that's
somehow
what
getting
playoff
in.
basketball's about.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And that's also what Game 1's about, because you think what a matchup's going to be, and then it's laid out in front of you, and it might be entirely different. It's, as you were talking about earlier, like, welcome back. When was how old were you the last time? You don't have to answer that, but it's.
How old do you think I was back then,
Ooh,
Anthony?
great question.
Now you've pinned me.
Yeah, it's okay. You think I'm going to be I'm not going to get offended by it. I'm just curious what you think. Yeah, guess how old I was the last time the Kings made the playoffs. You have to be serious.
I will pivot off that question by saying I actually, because of this story I'm doing, I watched the last Kings series with the Kevin Martin game winner, and I saw a little 8-year-old Deuce Mason in the crowd. No,
I was actually a senior in high school. He just looked like he was 8 years old.
Were you out at Arco in that series?
I was at the last playoff game. Game 6.
They got blown out, right?
Yeah, there was some hope. That's force of Game 7. That was actually a sneaky fun Kings team because they were a mess early in the year. They trade Peja for Ron Artest. What a gamble. And they kind of had that toughness. They had Ron Artest. Bonzi Wells was a beast in that series.
Bonzi Wells was the star of Game 4. I was reading about it.
Yeah. That was a fun series, but at the end, you knew it was the end of Rick Adelman there. It was definitely a bittersweet moment. I definitely did not go, oh, well, it's going to be 17 years before we get back here. But hey, here we are. So,
but we made it through.
We made it.
We made it through.
Unless they struggled twice in Portland this week.
Come on, Slater. What? Come on.
Don't even go there, Anthony Slater.
Any given Sunday.
Well, we look forward to your piece that's going to come out tonight if they clinch.
I was going to say that ain't up to me.
Oh, wow.
Well, hopefully soon we get a new Kings piece from Anthony Slater. He crushes it.
It'll be up when they clinch, but
Okay, it's happening tonight. I'm telling you tonight,
it.
Anthony Slater has a brand new piece you're going to want to read when the Kings clinch tonight. Anthony,
Dan Amick is writing a column too. I should promote that. So I think you're getting 2 Kings pieces only
when
they actually make the playoffs.
Okay.
All right.
Well, we're ready.
I can't wait for him. Anthony, thanks so much for joining us, man. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, see y'all.
Hell yeah, that's the one and only Anthony Slater. We get Slater and Amick pieces,
dude.
Dropping tonight.
Is it Clinchmas?
Merry Clinchmas! Oh.